them. Hello, Mrs. Moore's class. It was Mrs. Reed's third graders at Riverside Elementary in Jackson. We're glad you're here. Mrs. Konechki's class from Bemidji. I bet you guys have some of the coldest temperatures from our group. So yeah, welcome. We're so excited that you're joining us for this virtual field trip. My name is Sue Nan, and I work with the Minnesota Agriculture in the Classroom program. My colleague, my coworker Carrie, is doing our technology today, and we're crossing our fingers that the cold temperatures don't cause us any trouble. But if it does, we will just keep on trucking. And we are going to travel virtually to Faribault, Minnesota, and we are going to meet the owners of Maplewood Farm. So it is Sara and Mark Hewitt. Sara is the one that's going to be showing us around, and Mark is on the camera, so we won't get to see him, but he's doing important work with the camera today. But we are going to join them in their sheep barn, which is slightly warmer than the outside temperature, but you will notice that Sara is dressed very warmly. But Sara, why don't you tell us a little bit about Maplewood Farm?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you really well. Oh, and I forgot to tell classrooms, if you guys have questions that you would like to ask Sara, please use the Q&A and I will try my best to answer or ask as many as possible. But Sara, back to you. Tell us about Maplewood Farm.
Yeah, well, hello everyone, and welcome to our farm. Like Sue said, we are located in Faribault, Minnesota. We are on what is my family's century farm. That means it's been in my family for over 100 years now. And on our farm, we raise corn and soybeans, and then we also have beef cattle. We have our Suffolk sheep that you're going to meet today, and then we also have flowers and pumpkins, and then we have honeybees. So we have lots of things going on at our farm. We're pretty busy. But today I'm going to kind of introduce you to our sheep. So in this barn right now, we have all of our ewes or our mama sheep. So these ewes are all pregnant, and we thought by now we'd have a few lambs on the ground. However, they're all holding out on us. So I'm sure they're going to wait till tonight when it's really, really cold, and then we'll have lambs coming. But they are all pregnant, so they are all expected to have a lamb here, maybe some twins as well, probably in the next week or so. We'll typically be wrapped up by lambing by the first part of February here on the farm. Um, so right now you can see they're kind of all at the feed bunk. They just got done eating. So on our farm with our sheep, I can show you, we feed them just it's corn and grain pellets together. So it's some protein and some corn. That's what they eat here on the farm. And we raise the corn here on the farm that we feed our sheep. And then they also get free choice hay, and they'll probably come over because they see that I have it. They get free choice hay so they can eat as much hay as they want. When it's lambing season, they also get a little bit of alfalfa in their hay too, so it's not just grass. And that alfalfa gives them a little more energy as they get ready for lambing to have all those lambs. Can go in here.
Sara, there's a
Excuse.
couple questions about how much do these sheep eat? Like how many pounds, if you could estimate, of grain and how much hay or alfalfa you provide to them?
Yeah, so they get this is a large square bale. So it's not like the small ones that you maybe see around. It's a large square bale. It's about like a 6 by 6 size, so 6 foot by 6 foot size, and they get this all the time. So they have free access as much hay as they want. So we give that to them all the time. And then for feed, we feed them once a day, usually in the mornings. So we wake up really early on the farm. We wake up around 5 a.m. and we come out and we feed the sheep. Depending on the time of the year, they get a little more feed during lambing. So we'll typically feed them each a couple of 5-gallon pails of feed in the morning. And then as we wean the lambs, so that means that as the lambs get bigger, they don't need their moms as much, then we feed them actually less because that helps them not produce as much milk and not get sick or anything like that. So we feed them a little more when they're getting ready to have lambs and then a little less.
Mr. Schmaltz's class, Sara, is curious how many sheep you have on your farm.
We have 24 ewes right now, and then we have one ram right now. So the ram is kept separate from the sheep until we need him, usually in August.
So 20 boy, or I'm sorry, one boy and about 20 girls, and then we'll have lots of baby lambs here hopefully real soon.
Correct.
All right, so
Yes.
Mrs. Klecker's students, they're curious, how old is your oldest sheep?
Ooh, that's a great question. We have some girls that are about 6 years old. Um, Then we have some that are as young as about, ooh, almost, they're a little under a year. They'll be a year about in January. So with lambs, they can have babies before they're a year old. So we have some that are bred for that. But the oldest one I think is 6 on our farm right now. But you can keep them usually up until between 12 to 15 years. They can still be on the farm and still having lambs.
Excellent. Okay, Mrs. Klecker's class and Mrs. Lean's class, I think, go to our next topic. I know, Sarah, you wanted to tell us about lambs. So Mrs. Klecker's class is curious, where do the lambs go when they're born? And Mrs. Lean's class is curious, how long is a sheep pregnant for before she has before the lambs are born?
Oh, good questions. I'll start with how long they're pregnant for. On average, our Suffolk ewes are between 147 to 150, 152 days before they have a baby. That's how long they're pregnant for. 147 is kind of the average, so that's what we always assume. But these girls, some of them are going a little longer. They're going to hit that 152 day mark here. I think with the weather temperature swing, that pressure front coming in, we're going to see a few more babies. After a baby is born, after a lamb is born, we put them in these pens over here. These are called lambing jugs. Um, Lambing jug is just kind of a term for a little lamb jail, I guess. And they come in here, and it's really important for maternal bonding. So that means that the mama gets to bond with her babies, and she knows that that lamb is hers, and we can keep a really close eye on them. So we know that mama is feeding the lamb. We know that lamb's getting that colostrum, which is a really important form of milk when they first get born, and that they're getting milk. We can make sure baby's okay, that baby is warm. We can make sure that they're doing okay. Sometimes a mama might reject a lamb for some reason. Sometimes it's just she likes, if she has twins, she likes one better than the other. So when that happens, we have to take that in as a bottle lamb. And then we have a special area. We have an office that's heated that they go into, and they have a little heating pad that they can sit on and stay nice and warm. And we also will run like a blow dryer. It's kind of like a little like heat box for them to keep them nice and warm. If that happens, then we bottle feed them. But for the most part, these ones are all really good mamas, and they take care of them. After 24 to 48 hours, we make sure that we tag the baby to match her mom so we can keep track of which baby goes with which mom. And then they move to the back side, and I can walk that way. They move to the back side of our lambing barn. So kind of where
As you're
they're in right
walking,
now.
yeah, as you're walking, Sarah, Mrs. Moore's class kind of you talked about tagging, and they're curious, how do you tell the sheep apart? And I think that tagging probably helps, but maybe you want to share a few more details about that.
Yeah. So tagging definitely helps. So all of our mamas are tagged. They get a number. And then most of our sheep also have names. And then they also have another ID tag that our state requires. So they get 2 sets of tags in their ears. But the mamas with the lambs, because of that maternal bond they get in these pens, they know their lambs bleat and their mamas bleat. So that's kind of how they match up, kind of like in your home, your mom and dad probably know your voice. So that's kind of similar here, is that the moms know their lambs' voices, and then their lambs also have a really distinct smell. So then the moms kind of know which one is theirs too, just based on their smell too. But for us, it's all about that tagging and reading those ear tags. Sometimes you just get to know what they look like, and you're like, oh, I know that that is Milky Way, or that that's Snickers. We know which ones are which, especially the ones that we show for 4-H. Then we kind of know just what they look like, and we know that that's ours. And we do name our sheep. We've do different themes every year. Last year, last year was fruits and vegetables. So we've got cherry and kiwi and pepper. Um, previous years, we have Snickers and Milky Way and Twix because we had a candy bar theme. This year, all of our lambs will have flower names. So we have a list of a bunch of names from Poppy to Zinnia to Rose that we have listed that we're ready to use for this year's crop of lambs.
Excellent. And that was a couple questions they asked if you name your lambs, and you just gave us some great insight into that. Um, we know it's a cold day, and there's been a couple questions on, are they warm inside, and does the wool keep these sheep warm? So maybe you want to talk a little bit about their wool and shearing and how that works on your farm.
Yeah, absolutely. I can make my way up that way. And they're probably going to run here. They're not, we try not to disturb them as much as we can, but they're like, why are you in my pen? So we have a lot of bedding on the ground. That's one way that they keep warm. So we put a lot of straw down and we keep packing it so it gets really thick and deep. There's already probably about, I don't know, 6 inches packed under here. And then there's another kind of foot of loose straw on top. And we keep adding to that to create a really nice bed pack for them to keep them warm. And then, yeah, on our farm, we don't winter, we just shear right before springtime. So when it's getting to be about 55, 60 degrees and we know we're going to put them out on pasture, that's when we shear all of our sheep. Otherwise, during the winter, their wool keeps them really nice and warm. The barn is about 10 degrees, sometimes 15 degrees warmer than it is outside, but that wool really does insulate them, and that's one of the reasons why we keep their wool on over the winter months. And I can make my way that way too. That way we can show you what our shearing equipment looks like.
Sarah, as you're making your way up the steps, a couple questions about numbers. Students are curious, how much does your largest sheep weigh, and how much does your smallest one weigh? And when lambs are born, what would be a common weight for a baby lamb?
Yeah. So our baby lambs, they average typically anywhere between 10 and 16 pounds. We've had them a little bit higher. We've had like an 18-pound lamb, but for the most part, we try for that like 13-pound range. That's really good for a baby lamb. And then here, I can this that way they can see if that works. You can and then with like our mama ewes, typically they average about 145 to 180 pounds, depending. Our rams are weigh a lot more, but they're more in that 200 range. But our ewes anywhere from like the younger ones, I would say 145, to the mamas that have been around a while are probably about 180, 190 pounds. We have Suffolk sheep on our farm, so they're a lot larger than some of the other sheep that maybe other people have too. They're a larger framed breed, so they weigh a little bit more.
Excellent. Okay, before we look at the shearing equipment, Mrs. Konechki's students are wondering how many lambs are born at the farm each year, and then how many does each ewe have? Do they just have one at a time, or how does that go?
Oh, good question. So sheep are pretty renowned for having multiples. So our lambs, a lot of times or our ewes will end up having 2. So we have lots of sets of twins on our farm. Last year we had 3 sets of triplets. One year we had about 10 sets of triplets. So it kind of depends. If it's a single lamb, usually that lamb is a lot larger when she's born, but usually you get twins at the most. But yeah, triplets are not uncommon at all. We get quite a few sets of those too. So usually we hope for a set of twins. That's a really good thing, is to have those twins on the farm. But we don't, like, some people will ultrasound, just like mom goes to the hospital to have an ultrasound to check on her baby. Some people will ultrasound to know ahead of time how many they're expecting. We don't do that, but we can kind of gauge just on size of the ewe that it's going to be multiples. So There's some in there that are pretty wide, and we're thinking that we probably have a couple sets of triplets in there.
Excellent. Okay, so let's say if you have 20 ewes and each of them has twins, then you're looking at like 40 lambs. Is that kind of an average year for you guys?
Correct. Yes. Yep.
Okay, cool. Well, let's look at, I think you had some shearing equipment to show us. So let's take a look at that.
So this is our shearer. So it's kind of like a gigantic razor. Like you might go get your hair buzzed at the hair salon or at Great Clips or something like that. You might get a buzz cut done, or they might use that on your hair. This is kind of what that is too for sheep. Just the teeth are a little bit different because that wool is really coarse. Suffolk have really coarse wool. So to get through it, we have pretty wide teeth here. It comes in two parts. And then, yeah, you plug this in and you shear in a couple different directions. We kind of start with their back and then you flip them over and do their belly. And this is what we use to shear them. And our show sheep, the ones that we take to the fair every year, they get sheared a couple of times. For the most part, our ewes get sheared just once a year, but for our show sheep, they get sheared or trimmed probably about 2 to 3 times every year because they get a cut before every show, and we typically do 2 to 3 shows during the summer.
Okay, good to know. Mrs. Graw has a couple questions about wool. Um, how much wool is produced each year? And then where does the wool go and what is done with it? Like, does it made into clothes or other things? So I don't know if you know those answers, but the people are wondering, Sarah.
That's a good question. I don't know how much wool each sheep produces on average, but for us, we have a shearer that comes and helps us in the spring, and he'll take the wool down to a place in Iowa, and that wool gets cleaned. That's the big thing is the wool gets bits of hay and straw and feed and all those things in it. So it has to get nice and clean. So it goes through like a hot water bath a couple of times basically to get cleaned, and then it can be turned into all sorts of things. So it can be used in blankets, it can be used in hats, it can be used in furniture, clothing. Um, Socks are another big one that a lot of people have. I have a lot of wool socks. It's kind of making a comeback, I would say, in blankets and clothing specifically. People are using it a lot more. It is it's not as like highly flammable as like some materials that are used nowadays for like clothing and furniture. So it's really good that way. It's a really good insulator, so it keeps people really warm. And then because of its properties, it like wicks sweat away too. So it's a really good thing for like in the winter right now when you need to be outside and you might be moving and putting your body heat up. So that part's really nice. But yeah, I'm not sure. I'm gonna have to look up how much wool one of these ladies maybe produces on average per year. But yeah, we only shear once, so once a year their wool gets taken there. It can be used for like felting projects too. I have a lot of friends that are starting to do like felting projects, and you can make little stuffed animals out of wool. So that's kind of cool too.
Yeah, that sounds fun. And teachers on our Minnesota Ag in the Classroom curriculum matrix, we have a couple lessons and a kit where it shows how to make felted wool. And you can even get the supplies to do that if you're interested, let me know. So we have Mrs. Ruin's fifth graders in Lanesboro. They're curious about the lambs. Like do you keep the lambs or do you sell some of them or what happens to those lambs?
Yeah, so most of these ladies started out as lambs on our farm, and we've kept them as part of our herd here, or part of our flock. When we keep a lamb, we look for some different traits. Part of it is like if their mom was a really good mom, we maybe want to keep them in our flock and keep producing with those. Sometimes it's whether or not they've got a really nice straight flat back. We look at that too. We look at things like their head size. We look at things like their bone structure just to see if they're tall. We like tall sheep for the most part. So sometimes we'll keep them and put them in our herd, and we use them kind of as like replacement ewes, and they become part of our flock here on the farm. Sometimes we do sell some. We sell some to other 4-H families that are looking to show sheep. So those go to other homes. And then some of them do go to market, and we sell those to a market about an hour or so from our house. And they can be used for meat in your on your kitchen tables. We do have a meat trailer on our farm where we sell retail cuts of meat. But I think one thing people don't realize is like we don't sell baby lambs for that. We sell lambs that are about 120 pounds for that. So they're quite big by the time they get to that stage that we're thinking about that part for their life cycle here on the farm. But we do sell retail cuts of like lamb chops and lamb sticks and ground lamb, and we sell that to our local community too.
Excellent. Okay, there's been a couple classes, Mrs. Schulte's, for example, they're curious about the water. Like, what kind of water do the sheep drink and how much? So maybe, Sarah, if it's not too much trouble, if you would want to walk back down there, I can see their
Yep,
water tank. But if
yep.
you want to show that, and as you're walking, Mrs. Schulte's class also spied your cat. They're wondering if it's a guard cat or just for fun.
Good questions. Here we can kind of walk back in the pen a little bit. Sorry, ladies, I'm coming back in. So this is their water tank. You'll see this is hanging down in there right now. This is a de-icer, and that just keeps it from freezing over. And right now we fill it probably about every 2 to 3 days, give or take. So they're drinking quite a bit of water. I'm not even sure what gallon tank this is. 300-gallon tank, probably, give or take. So about 300 gallons every 2 to 3 days of water they're going through. And then all of our kittens on the farm, I think we have Lloyd and Elsa. Not sure who else was floating around in the camera, but they are all my kids' kittens. I have two kiddos. I have a fifth grader and a kindergartner, and so they're pets, but they also do really good at keeping mice away on the farm too. Because when you have livestock with feed, mice like the feed. So the cats do a good job of keeping the mice away.
Excellent. Okay, Mrs. Klecker's class is curious, Sarah, do you have other barns on your farm or just this one? Oh,
Um,
there's a cat right there that wants a drink of water.
yes, we we do have a loafing shed where our cattle are. So we do have another barn on the farm for the cattle.
And so do these sheep go outside in the wintertime or do they just mostly stay in this barn?
They stay out till about the first part of January. They have a big pasture with kind of like a run-in that they go into. And then they come in about the first part of January, and they'll stay in here for about the next 3 months.
Excellent. Okay, I don't know if anyone watching has spied this, but whenever I see these sheep, it looks like they're standing there and they're chewing. So I know that you just fed them, but maybe you want to talk about why are they chewing so much?
Yeah, so they only have like one set of teeth. So because of that, they're kind of just always moving their jaws and moving those teeth to help kind of break down their food. So whether that's they get fed whole pellet corn, so that just kind of helps them break it down a little bit. So yeah, they're just nice and content that way. Just means that they're content.
Excellent. Okay, Mrs. Ruin's fifth graders have a few more questions. First of all, they're curious about your cattle. Are they for beef or for dairy, and how many do you have? And secondly, have you ever had any problems with coyotes or dogs causing trouble with your sheep?
Um, our cattle are for beef predominantly. So we again have that meat trailer on our farm. So most of them go into like ground beef or beef sticks. We have red Angus on our farm. And then we don't really have any trouble with coyotes. We have a farm dog. His name is Copper, and he kind of comes around, and I think his scent on the farm kind of keeps away other dogs and coyotes.
Excellent. Okay, Mrs. Schulte's class has another question. They're curious, how do you keep the sheep clean, and do you ever have to clean their hooves?
Ooh, another good question. Their hooves do get trimmed when they get sheared. So once a year, they get a nice pedicure. They get their hooves trimmed up. Our show sheep do get cleaned. They get baths quite a bit to keep their wool nice and bright and white during show season. But otherwise, these gals, we don't really do anything with. Their wool is a nice protectant coat for them.
Excellent. Okay, there is a question about that blue structure. They're wondering if that's like a feeder or what that is. I don't know, Mark, if you're able to get a close up of that and tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, so this is a free choice mineral feeder. So it's a lot of like salt in there and some vitamin E and some selenium and some iron. And that just helps give them all the vitamins and nutrients that they need throughout their pregnancy, throughout when they're going to have lambs. Some of those vitamins are really, really important so that way they have strong, healthy lambs.
Excellent. Okay, well, thank you so much. We're curious, or there's a couple questions about the breed of sheep. So you said they're Suffolk, and we can see that they have the black face and the black legs. Sometimes we see sheep that are like all white, or maybe, a slightly different color. Can you talk to us a little bit why you want to raise this breed of sheep?
Yeah, so this breed is really hardy. They are known as like a dual purpose breed. So they have meat, they're known for their meat qualities as well as for their wool quality. So that was kind of one of the reasons that we liked them. They're nice and big, so you can get like a lot of meat off of them when you do use them for that. And honestly, we just kind of liked the way they looked when we picked out what kind of breed of sheep we were going to raise on our farm. We thought they were really pretty, and they're very pretty girls with their black faces, and we just really liked them. So that was kind of one of the factors too when we decided to add sheep to our farm.
Awesome. All right. Well, Mrs. Reed's class has a curious. They are curious if the ram lives nearby and if we're able to meet him, or if that's just too much trouble.
Oh, it is very, very cold out. I don't, he's probably tucked away in his shed right now, would be my guess.
All right, sounds
Um,
good. Well, we are running near to the end of our time. We'll just have to trust you that he's a good looking guy, or sheep, I guess. So a few just questions to wrap things up. What are your kids? What do they really like to do on the farm?
Yeah, they really like to help with chores. So my daughter comes out in the morning and she helps with chores. My kids show sheep, so they like to do that. They do like to help with lambing season and bottle feeding. My daughter, especially, she's in fifth grade. She learned how kind of help take care of the lambs last year. That was one of her big jobs. And yeah, I think the sheep are probably their favorite. They do like the beef cows too, but they get a little bit bigger. So they're a little bit intimidating sometimes when it's bigger for them. So yeah, they like both, but helping with chores is probably the biggest thing.
And that means just feeding and giving them water and that sort of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, and then for the show sheep, lots of baths and lots of walking. They basically kind of end up like a dog. You walk them around just like you would walk your dog, and you give them lots of baths. So that ends up being a lot of work.
I bet, but fun too. So, the final question, Sarah, for you and Mark, if you want to get his insight as well, is like, what is your favorite part about being farmers?
Good question. I think our favorite part is just being able to raise something that helps our community. We love being able to provide feed for our community through, or food for our community through our beef and our sheep. We love being a part of our community. We go to our farmers market on Saturdays, and we love seeing the people and having those relationships and interactions with the people in our town, and being able to kind of support that. And there's just something about having your family legacy be about farming and being a part of that and being able to carry on that tradition and working the land and being outside and all of that just it makes you happy. It brings joy to your life, and I think that is probably the biggest piece. Is it's joyful for us. We enjoy doing it.
Well, that is a fantastic answer, Sarah. Thank you. And thank you to you and Mark for hosting us today and braving the cold weather to show us and introduce us to your ewes. And we wish you the best for lambing season. And yeah, thanks again. Thank you, classrooms, for joining us. We hope that you stay warm and have a great winter. So take care, everyone. See you soon.